Welcome back to part 3 of my Learn JavaScript coding tutorial. In this series, I'll introduce you to the basics of JavaScript and help you to get started. This tutorial series is designed for beginners who have very little or no experience with JavaScript, as it will cover many of the basics. However, most of the things that we learn in this series will easily translate to many other coding languages. If you are not familiar with JavaScript, what it is or how it works, I recommend you watch the first 2 videos in this series. In this episode, we're going to look at variables. What is a variable? A variable is a way to reference a piece of information. Additionally, as the name implies, the information contained in a variable is dynamic and can change at any time. When you are generating a dynamic content, you may not always know the value of the information that you are using. It would be impossible to guess the values or cycle through every possible value in order to do something with that value. For that reason, a variable is a very important piece of every program or script in every coding language, because the variable creates a reference to that value using a known key or known keyword. Here's a real-life example. Think of a variable as a note card. On each note card, someone wrote a small piece of information. However, we do not know what that information is, so in order to find out what information was written, we must reference a particular note card in order to look at that information. In this example, each note card is numbered, and I can reference that note card with their numbers. If I want to know the value of note card number 2, I pick up note card number 2, which says blue. Or if we assigned names to each note card representing a person's first name, and asked each of those individuals to write a random word on their note card. We have no idea what they wrote, but we do know their name. Their name would be the name of our variable, and the random word that each of them wrote would be the value of that variable. For example, Susan wrote hello. In JavaScript, we reference a variable by simply using the name of that variable. However, all variables must first be defined before we can use them. In order to define a variable, we type var. So in our code, we'll type var Susan. This is a variable called Susan. To assign a value to that variable, we then use the assignment operator, which is an equals sign. Type equals hello. You'll notice I surrounded hello in quotes. That's because this is a string. I'll get into what that means in a minute. Remember that each line must end with a semicolon. You can reassign a value to this variable at any time using the equals sign. I'll get into interacting with variables more in depth in the next episode, but for now, we're just understanding what a variable is and how it's used. At any point in our script, we can reference that variable by its name. If we type document.writeSusan, save that, and switch to our browser, when we refresh the page, we will see the word hello. This is because we were not writing the name Susan, but instead we were referencing a variable called Susan and writing the value of that variable, which is hello. Back in our code, after writing the variable, if I reassign the value to goodbye, and then write Susan again in our browser, we'll see that it says hello goodbye. Of course, there's no space or line break there because I did not include a space or line break between these words. I could add a space or line break tag to the end of our hello string inside of the quotes. You can name your variables anything you wish, with a few rules. Though it is important in real-world practice to adopt and stick to a naming convention, which refers to the standards that you adhere to when it comes to how you choose names for variables, capitalization, and handling spaces. I won't get into naming conventions in this tutorial series, but I have included a link to a video about naming conventions in the description below. A variable name can't start with a number. It can't contain a space or most other special characters. However, it can contain any letters or numbers as well as underscores. Variable names are case-sensitive. There are many different types of variables. Any variable that you create could consist of any type of value. Some common types of variables are booleans, strings, integers, and floats. There's an unlimited number of types of variables or types of data that your variable could contain, some of which we'll get into in future episodes, but for now, we'll look at these 4 common types. A string is basically text. It can consist of any string of characters. To define a variable as a string, you will simply wrap its value in quotes, either single quotes, like this, or double quotes, like this. The only difference between single quotes and double quotes is which character you'll have to escape if you use that character in the string. If we use single quotes and type var isn't it a nice day, JavaScript will interpret our apostrophe, or the second single quote, in the word isn't as the ending of the string, resulting in an error due to the rest of the line not being included in the string. In order to use a single quote inside of a string that is wrapped in single quotes, Whichever single quotes or apostrophes that are part of the string's value will need to be escaped. This means we'll put a slash in front of the apostrophe, and this is called escaping it. Because there's a slash, this tells JavaScript to ignore whatever special use the following character may have, in this case closing the string, and simply use it as a literal part of the string. The slash will also be omitted. However, if we type the same thing using double quotes, we do not need to escape the apostrophe. But if we typed a different string, such as "she said this is great," we'll now need to escape both double quotes, which are supposed to be part of the string. By using the opposite type of quotes, you can avoid escaping characters. However, it is best practice to choose and stick to either one or the other, and either escape characters as needed or only use the other one when absolutely necessary. A third and newer alternative is the backtick, top left of your keyboard under the tilde. When wrapping a string in backticks, we do not have to escape either the single quotes or the double quotes. And it also opens up the door to some additional advantages which we'll discuss in a future episode. However, the backticks are not compatible in some older browsers, and most common practice is to only use backticks when advantageous and not as a complete replacement of single or double quotes. The next of the common types of variables I mentioned is a Boolean, which is simply a true or false. In JavaScript, you can assign the value of true or the value of false to a variable. You do not need to wrap it in quotes. If you do, then it will actually be interpreted as a string, not as a Boolean. A Boolean is simply a variable that is either on or off, yes or no, true or false. It is a binary type of variable and can be useful in many circumstances, which you'll see in future episodes. An integer is a whole number. A float is any other number, likely a decimal. You also do not need to wrap integers or floats in quotes either. For a few quick examples, we'll open the console in our browser and work in there. If I create an integer called number equals 00043, and then I console.log number, I will only see a whole number and it won't be 43. That's because an integer with a leading 0 is interpreted as an octal number, or base 8, rather than a decimal, or base 10. Also, any unnecessary zeros were omitted. If I wanted to present the leading zeros, I would have to wrap this in quotes, in which case it would be interpreted as a string. That's it for today's Learn JavaScript tutorial. In the next episode, we'll dive into how to interact with JavaScript variables. If you found this to be helpful, please hit the like button. Please also consider subscribing and sharing this video, as it really helps me to continue to make more videos like this. If you're interested in learning other languages, please check out my other coding tutorial series. You may also wish to check out some of my more advanced tutorials. Thanks for watching.